All right, happy Wednesday, everyone. You know, we're 1 week away from Earth Day, and while this year's edition will be quite a bit different than Earth Days of years past, we are seeing some positive environmental developments because of all the shutdowns. Air pollution is plummeting around the world, and I just saw a headline that more animals are returning to a number of places, including Yosemite National Park. Perhaps, whenever we come out of this, we'll see a shift in activities like commuting or air travel. Yeah, we'll see. You know, there is no planet B for the billions of humans on Earth, and not just the current ones like you and I, but also the expected humans just around the corner in 2050. And there's no path to a sustainable future for these inhabitants that does not involve buildings, because buildings in the US account for over 40% of carbon emissions and 75% of electricity consumption. Look, we're already on the precipice, or in some cases exceeding planetary boundary conditions for critical environmental factors. Now, what kind of critical factors, you ask? Well, the ones that will determine the ultimate survivability of life moving forward. And that's why a zero energy buildings imperative is our new reality. The good news is there are so many options for building stakeholders to join the zero movement. So today, we're going to demystify all of these choices and provide clear guidance that helps the substantially diverse stakeholders identify their best path forward and take immediate actions. Now, just like our last webinar, we have a guest debut appearance today. Many of you may know, or at least familiar with, Sam Rashkin. He's still the chief architect at DOE's Building Technologies Office. He's also the author of the book titled Retooling the U.S. Housing Industry, How It Got Here, Why It's Broken, and How to Fix It, that presents a comprehensive strategy for transforming the new homebuyer consumer experience. Now, apart from this work, Sam has earned a national reputation for his work leading housing programs that have partnered with thousands of home builders and resulted in over 1 million certified high-performance homes. During his 20-plus years as a licensed architect in California and New York, he specialized in energy-efficient design and completed over 100 residential projects. He's also served on the national steering committees for USGBC's Lead for Homes, NHB's Green Building Guidelines, EPA's WaterSense label, and also served on the development team for EPA's Indoor Air Plus label. Now, we've got 3 sponsors for this webinar. Of course, you know our friends at PowerShift by NV Energy, a program that helps residential and business customers conserve energy and save money on their power bills. PowerShift is a one-stop resource to find energy-efficient products and services. For more information, please visit nvenergy.com/PowerShift. Another one of our sponsors is Team Zero, which is a nonprofit promoting the many paths to zero to accelerate the market adoption of zero energy, zero carbon, zero impact homes, commercial buildings, developments, communities, and retrofits all across North America. Now, our third sponsor is the Structural Insulated Panel Association, or SIPA. They are a nonprofit trade association representing manufacturers, suppliers, dealer distributors, design professionals, and builders committed to providing quality structural insulated panels for all segments of the construction industry. For the past 30 years, SIPA has made tremendous progress in advancing energy-efficient construction with structural insulated panels. Now, I also need to let you know that this webinar qualifies for AIA credit in the health, safety, and welfare category. Green Building Media will be sending out more information after the webinar, but I can share with you now that the course number is 201, and the provider number is 501-11211. Now that we're through all the housekeeping, I wanted to let you know that you can submit questions for Sam. Simply use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. I'll review those questions and ask them to him during the Q&A time set aside after the presentation. Now, Sam does have a prior commitment after the webinar, so we'll get to as many questions as we can by 3:10 p.m. Eastern Time. And now, I am ecstatic to welcome Sam Rashkin to the webinar series.
Hey, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. Before I begin, I have to acknowledge that I know many of you are builders, architects, HERS raters, building science groups and associations, all who are tremendously affected by the current energy health crisis going on. And I'm so attached to the housing industry and all the stakeholders. I think I speak for the entire Zero Ready team and building media as well that we really feel the pain you're going through. And I really appreciate you taking the time today to listen in on what I think is a really, really important topic. We're going to talk about demystifying zero. And the premise here, of course, is that zero is so critical right now to the building industry. And to build a movement, we are confident that we have to avoid confusion. So now's the time to do that. So I'm going to hope in the next 45 minutes or so to kind of walk you through a framework for how that can be done, give you an example, and then open up to questions. So thank you for being here. And let's begin first by going through why zero. And I'm going to take you through something that will explain itself in a few moments, but I want to talk about going from data to wisdom. And data is just raw measurements that might be useful. So it's just a bunch of different data points, and who knows if they help or not. And if we find some trends, we can convert them to information. Now we have insights and we understand something much better. And we can do some analytics and really work at the trends that we see. Often we can uncover principles that lead to knowledge. We have true subject area expertise, and we can have basic ways of actually getting results that we like. But the pinnacle of all this is leadership through wisdom. If we apply experience to all that knowledge, now we're at the point where we can make good judgment and get the best outcomes and truly lead movements. So a lot of what we're about today is to talk about the wisdom I think we have at this juncture that's unique to this time. So wisdom light, knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom's knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. So if we're going to just not be totally serious, that's a good way to look at it. But to be truly serious and apply wisdom, as you heard in the introduction, there is no planet B, and good planets are hard to come by, and more significantly, planet A is in trouble. And I think a lot of us know that. We kind of see all the various kinds of different data points, but what I find really extraordinary is some of the work done at the University of Stockholm in Sweden, and they've done a lot of work collecting data on 9 planetary boundaries. And if you graph all these different 9 planetary environmental factors, all the curves look roughly like this. So it's a lot of good data showing basically how it all sorts out over time. But once we identify trends, 2 really remarkable and significant pieces of insight come from that. One is the magnitude that we're achieving within these planetary boundary conditions, and the other is the rate of change. The change rate, it's called the age of acceleration, is virtually historically fast. We haven't seen this rate of change, and it's truly affecting the planet. So the knowledge is that when we do a lot of analytics and we look at what the boundary conditions are on the planet, we realize there's this uncertainty threshold where if we cross it, the sustainability of this planet's truly challenged. And so wisdom is that planet A is in trouble. And a lot of the results are plotted and shown in various papers and studies, but essentially this is what it looks like. And what you see basically is a spider diagram, and in the concentric circle on the inside is a safe zone. And you see virtually all but 2 of these planetary boundary conditions are in the uncertainty zone or beyond the uncertainty zone in red. And it's cause to be concerned. In the case of climate change and CO2, most of you know we're at 400 parts per million, the highest level in 800,000 years, for which we have good data. And you know, globally, last year, 2019, was the warmest year on record, wrapping up the hottest decade ever on record. So clearly, all the science and data tells us change is profound in this area. In the case of biodiversity, there are 8.7 million species on the planet, but the UN reports suggest that 1 million of those species are at risk of extinction. And we really care about that because it really impacts the safety net for this planet, because these species provide food, clean water, air, energy, and more life-supporting functions that are critical to all of us. And in terms of deforestation, about 46% of the trees have been felled, according to one study, since humans started cutting down forests. So that's critical, plus the rate of change that's currently happening, again, is at an acceleration rate that historically has never been seen. Same thing's happening with ocean acidification, fresh water, aerosols. Virtually all these planetary boundary conditions are truly being challenged, and at least 2/3 of them are directly related to carbon. So this is Planet A before buildings. This is actually imagined by the National Geographic scientists and artists, and it's tens of thousands of years ago what the planet looked like on this one spot. And then in a blip of time with buildings, this is what the very same spot looks like. And more significantly, this is New York City. Over the next 35 years, an entire New York City will be constructed every 35 days, 2 trillion square feet. And almost every month, another New York City. This data, this information is critical because buildings consume over 40% of all the energy in this country and therefore account for over 40% of all the air emissions. Also, buildings consume over 70% of all the electricity, and over 80% of electricity produced today is from fossil fuels. So the wisdom is that any solution to any kind of sustainable planetary boundary conditions must include zero buildings. There's no path without zero buildings. Further, in the US, we account for about 4% of the world's population, but we also account for about 16% of the world's carbon emissions. So further wisdom is that the US has to play a critical role in the movement to zero. There's no path that doesn't include our country. And the good news is the zero movement's begun. First of all, in terms of homes, it's amazing the growth in certifications and movement towards zero. Just the HERS ratings that have been done showed evidence of that movement. I think last year there were about 240,000 plus HERS ratings with an average HERS index score of 59. And when you realize that you're moving into zero territory at 50 or low 50s or high 40s, it suggests maybe about 100,000 homes a year at maybe 850,000 single family home starts per year are already well positioned to do zero. In addition, Energy Star certified homes has certified over 2 million homes, which is a great base for high performance. And Zero Energy Ready Home is over 5,000 homes certified. And then there's an inventory done by the Team Zero group that's realized growth to over 22,000 certified zero energy ready homes in the US and Canada. And that's about almost a 400% growth from 2015 to 2018. So it's amazing what's happening in homes. And then in terms of the builder interest, it's also evidence that there's a movement kind of moving up. There are 2,700 plus Energy Star certified home builder partners. There are over 500 zero energy ready home builder partners. And in a study done by Dodge Data Analytics, 100% more builders in 2019 compared to 2017 have indicated interest to build net zero or zero ready homes. So everywhere you turn, you see the builders are also showing evidence that they are understanding zero is an important movement that's happening. In terms of cities, again, so much evidence that zero is happening. There are 19 mayors who have globally signed a net zero carbon pledge. So they're going to go to net zero new homes by 2030 and new and existing homes by 2050. 7 of those cities are in the US. And so really profound interest there, but even more significant, at the Climate Action Summit last September, 100 plus cities globally committed to net zero carbon emissions. And then when it comes to states, 9 states have committed to carbon-free electricity by 2050, and 6 states already have significant movement towards zero energy codes. So very significant progress at the state level, and nations also are moving to zero. We have 15 countries that have adopted net zero targets from earlier climate meetings, and the very last one we mentioned back in September, 77 countries committed to net zero carbon emissions by 2050 as well. And so just really significant what's happening across the board that suggests a zero movement's begun. And the other good news is that when we have good leadership based on this wisdom, we can make a difference. So from that same research work from the University of Stockholm and great climate scientists, highly esteemed experts, you can look at the curve, the more precise curve for stratospheric ozone. Basically, there was way too much emissions of CFCs in the atmosphere. The global community got together and implemented tremendous policies to curb the dangerous CFCs. And what you see in terms of percent loss of ozone and the size of the ozone hole that resulted shrinking was impressive. And we've dropped way below the uncertainty threshold. We can make a difference when we act as a global community. So it brings me to the conclusion of this first section, basically, is that the reason for zero is that it's an imperative. We have to do it. And we just can't ignore the measurements, the facts, the science around us. Everything suggests this is where we have to go. Well, if this is where we have to go, it'd be sure great if everyone had a clear understanding of what it is and how to apply it and how to engage it. So that's what we're going to do in the next section. What is zero and how do we work with it? And this is really critical because, again, we have to avoid confusion. If zero is going to be successful, have legs, and be a permanent solution, we have to early establish a framework. And the framework begins by understanding that there are 4 key factors for what really drive the degree with which we're addressing zero challenges. And the first is high performance. And in terms of high performance, this is one where mostly all of us are familiar with to various degrees. It's about having really comprehensive building science, indoor air quality, water conservation, grid integration, and resilience. Next is the operational energy of the building, the annual energy consumption. And the only way we get that lower is with comprehensive energy efficient solutions. And the 2 elements to the consumption is the electric consumption and fossil fuel consumption for buildings that consume both. And for no carbon buildings, those that use electric only. Those are the 2 basic strategies for how we can reduce our energy use in buildings. On the renewable side, we can have renewable energy on site. We can have a kind of a local microgrid in the neighborhood or the community. We can have utility systems, utility scale generation or utility distributed generation systems, or we can purchase offsets, which are valid, reliable ways of purchasing energy that's renewable and basically is as good as producing it on your own site. So there's 4 options and there's 4 degrees with which different programs address renewable energy. And the last is embodied energy. And essentially, this is the more difficult one that's become a more significant concern for many lately. This is the energy that's not operational energy, but the energy that's associated with how we construct the building, the carbon that results from extracting the resources to produce the materials, the carbon that's used to produce the materials, the carbon that's involved in transporting the materials, so they ultimately get to the job site, and finally the end-of-life processing materials and the carbon emissions associated with that. So basically, these are the 4 key factors. I want to dive just a little bit deeper into high performance, just to show you how granular though these things can go. So if it's building science we care about, what we really are trying to address are the 4 control layers: bulk water, airflow, moisture, vapor, and thermal control. And if it's indoor air quality, it's usually source control, keeping contaminants out, dilution, diluting the contaminants that do get inside, and usually filtration at the end to capture particles in the airstream going through HVAC systems. Water conservation is minimizing water use inside the building, indoors, and for landscaping outdoors. and grid integration, which is all about optimizing buildings with the grid system. So you minimize peak and load shaving and all the things you're trying to do to get the grid system to do the most with the least cost. It involves smart meters, smart technologies, smart controls and management systems, storage, and electric vehicle charging. All those things are combined to high performance grid integrated buildings. And on the resilience side, we're trying to be resistant to events, weather, natural, and pests, and also after disasters may occur, to optimize the ability for buildings to be occupied so that people can stay in the buildings once a disaster event occurs. So this is how granular this all gets. And what I want to acknowledge right now, of course, is that our biggest focus is on, when we talk about high performance buildings, usually is with building science and indoor air quality. And I want to call your attention, though, that water conservation, grid integration, resilience are rapidly rising as equally critical parts of a high performance building. And I think as a community, we need to figure out how to embrace all these other factors as well for truly high performance buildings. Okay, enough about that. So what is this demystification solution for Zero? And it's basically a gateway that's being delivered by this nonprofit association, Team Zero, formerly the Net Zero Energy Coalition. And the way the gateway works is it's completely non-judgmental way to lay out all the options for anyone in the building industry to get on the path to zero. We all need to get on the path to zero. We acknowledge that there's a zero imperative. Let's get on the path. But there are different ways to do zero. It all begins with doing code minimum, then going to high performance buildings, then zero energy ready, zero net energy, zero net carbon, net positive carbon, and ultimately to the penultimate solution, the zero embodied energy. Let me show you how these all lay out with some graphics so that you understand the difference between each of these steps. So I'm going to have this key at the bottom, which has the 4 factors we talked about: high performance, annual consumption, renewable energy, embodied energy. And the gray bar is the high performance kind of measurement. The green bars are annual consumption, light green with fossil fuel, dark green without. Renewable energy is yellow, and embodied energy is orange. So if we look at a code minimum home with these 4 bars, you can see that there's a minimum requirement for performance within the code. There's also a minimum performance level that's enforced, and those are maybe 2 different items, but essentially there's a minimum performance the code gets you. And on top of that, codes have gotten much more efficient, so the green bar is the amount of energy consumption in a code building, and these are all for comparison purposes, not precise bars. And you'll notice that there is no renewable energy required by any of the codes. And then we have this embodied energy. That represents, a third to 25% of the total carbon in a code building. And that's the starting point where we are. And if we were to get on the first step to zero, it would be a high performance building. And what we've done here is we've taken high performance and we've improved it significantly. Programs like Energy Star certified homes have a tremendous comprehensive approach to a lot of building science principles that really ratchet up performance, for example. And what also happens is we tend to reduce the energy use from a code building about 20%. So we're better on energy efficient consumption. So our annual consumption operational energy or carbon is lower. We still don't require renewables, so that doesn't show up. And lastly, you have the same embodied energy, but now instead of being like 25 or 30%, it's moving closer to 40% of the total carbon equation, if you will, for that building. And the next step is to move to zero energy ready home or building. And what changes now is you ratchet up and dial up the high performance features in the home. So they're better than the high performance by itself. You reduce the energy use by another 15 or 20%. and you still don't have renewables, you're zero energy ready, you're not net zero, and you still have the embodied energy, which now may be more than 50% of the total carbon equation. Maybe it's 60%. So what you see is the significance of the embodied energy keeps getting higher, and we keep improving the performance and the energy efficient performance as well. So the next step is zero net energy, and really what we're doing is filling in the blank. We made a building that's high performance and so efficient so it can offset all the annual operational energy. And now what we're doing with zero net energy is we are offsetting it. And remember, there are 4 options for how we can do it. We could do it on site, microgrid, we could do it with utility purchase of renewable power, or we can do it with offsets. But essentially now we're offsetting all our operational energy, but our operational energy in this case is with fossil fuel potentially. So to go without fossil fuel, the big difference with zero net carbon is we switch from light green to dark green. We go to all electric buildings, so we know there's no carbon emissions on site that are much more difficult to manage. So now we have a truly zero net carbon building, except for the embodied energy. Again, about 60% to 70% now of the total carbon. So now the idea is to go net positive carbon and build a reserve, have some extra carbon. So we have renewable energy greater than the annual consumption. So we have a little bit of extra carbon more than operational energy. There's a little bit of a reserve because we still recognize we have our embodied energy. And the last step is now we have zero embodied energy. What we're doing is we're going to now select and use materials conscientiously that minimize the embodied energy. So we might, let's say, switch from concrete to wood construction, from foam insulation to wood fiber insulation. There are lots of techniques and strategies for how we can minimize embodied energy. And now this reserve of a net positive carbon building offsets the much, much reduced carbon associated with embodied energy. And we've gone the full staircase, if you will, up to a zero embodied energy building. And the most important point here is this is an ecosystem. For the longest time, and by too many, I believe, the perception was a lot of these programs were competing with each other. That's completely not true. This is an ecosystem where each part supports the other. If I'm a code minimum builder, it's very unlikely I'm ready to go to net positive carbon or zero embodied energy or even zero energy ready. Having programs like high performance programs like Energy Star, Air Plus, and other programs are vital. They're kind of a portal for everyone to get on the path to zero. And if I'm a high performance builder, now I'm ready to go to zero ready or zero net energy. And I may not be ready to go to net carbon. I may have commitments to some fossil fuel choices on site. So I have a way to at least be on the path of making tremendous progress, and more solutions are developing for all electric buildings. So then we have a path to go to net carbon, zero net carbon, and we can find solutions to go positive, and then finally to address embodied energy as builders and the infrastructure for architects and verifiers and consultants all figure out how to manage the complete pathway to zero. And that's the importance of the Team Zero portal. And it's also why Team Zero is so perfect for this. The reason I wouldn't do this in my role with the Department of Energy is I have a horse in the race. I run a program called Zero Energy Ready Home. And so I'm blocked into the one program. I may not have as much ease bringing all the players that need to be brought in as a non-biased, unvested organization like Team Zero, who can gather all the vested interests in Zero under a common umbrella, if you will. So here's the gateway, and the way it works, let's say I'm interested in figure out that, no, I'm an Energy Star builder. I think I'm ready to go the next step to Zero Ready. I can click on Zero Ready, and I can see all the various choices for what I can do. I can do the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home program, Passive House, either FIAS or the North American Passive House. I can do other programs. And let's say I'm interested in the Zero Energy program. By clicking on it, immediately I get a display about that option. And if I click on the main title, I get to the web page for Zero Energy Ready Home. If I click on, let's say I'm interested in resources, and I want to have examples of how Zero Energy Ready works in empirical evidence, I can click on case studies, and that will take me to the Zero Ready tour of Zero, and I can go virtually visit hundreds and hundreds of homes from that program that are great empirical evidence of what Zero Energy Ready can do. So the way the gateway works is basically it's to find the best fit for each individual, because everyone needs to be in the path, and then to find solutions and quick links to those solutions so they can take action. This is the taxonomy, if you will, for the Team Zero Gateway as it's currently laid out, and it will be a work in progress. It will keep growing and changing, evolving. Already, as we speak, a lot of green programs are adding zero energy options within those programs that will have to be added. But Team Zero will collect all the players and have this amazing resource with this robust taxonomy for all the options for how everyone can be part of the Zero pathway. Now, one more sister to this gateway is the Team Zero Resource Finder. Let's say rather than a program, I'm interested in resources. There are a whole array of different resources that would menu down that you could choose from. Again, let's say I wanted case studies. All the programs that have case studies basically would be featured. Let's say I wanted the Zero Energy Ready Home case studies. Again, by example, it would take me to the Tour of Zero for the Zero Energy Ready Home. And by clicking on the maps, I can go to hundreds and hundreds of the great empirical examples of Zero Energy Ready homes. And we'll talk more about this specific Tour of Zero in a few moments, but you kind of get the picture. And this is the actual first iteration of the gateway as it's currently under development. And the thing I want to highlight for you is a couple of things. There are three key activities that Team Zero is doing. We talked about the gateway and how critical it is that we get the entire ecosystem of Zero working as a collective impact group, and we need an organization that is credible and not tied to any individual program to be the portal to kind of bring people in and get them to the right solutions. So that's the first thing Team Zero is doing. The second thing it's doing is it's going to continue its inventory of Zero certified homes in the US and Canada. A lot of great feedback about the inventory over the first 4 years. When I cited the number of 22,000 plus certified homes in the US and Canada, that was from the latest Team Zero inventory. And so we will track the progress of people getting on the path to Zero with the inventory. And lastly is the Zero campaign. We need virtually all the stakeholders in the gateway to work together, and all the vested manufacturers, associations, and organizations in Zero to all work together on a cohesive, coordinated campaign, educating both policymakers, the public, consumers, everyone about this critical imperative for Zero, and the call to action: go the gateway and get on the path to Zero. So the campaign is something that's going to be developed this year. This is what Team Zero does. And I hope you notice that there's a contact person listed on this slide as well. For any of you who are interested in the gateway and in Team Zero, Mary McLeod-Jones is your person to contact. Her email's listed there and phone number. So I hope you are as excited as we are that this is such a critical mission to get everyone to understand Zero and how it works and all the flavors and how it all is a strategic staircase to this critical final step we're trying to get to. So that's enough about the gateway. So the last thing I want to do is kind of show you another critical part of demystifying Zero, which is that all of us individually and whatever we're doing have to be incredibly effective at conveying the value of zero and the importance of zero. And so I want to give, by example, show what we do with Zero Energy Ready Home for our own individual program to demystify it for our key stakeholders. I'm going to talk about the builders, and I'm going to talk about consumers and what we do to convey the importance of zero to those target audiences. And it's very different from what the gateway is doing. We're trying to get people to take action to join a program who are ready for the program, usually targeting, in our case, the Energy Star high performance builders who are ready to move up to Zero Energy Ready. So here's the taxonomy for the gateway, and you are here with Zero Energy Ready Home, one of the options under Zero Energy Ready in this roadmap to zero. So first, builders. The most important thing we can do in working with builders is keep it simple. So we have three basic building blocks that get you to Zero Energy Ready Home. Everyone has compelling value. The first thing we're doing is we're optimizing energy efficient performance. Typically, we're another 15-20% above Energy Star, about 40 to 50% above the 2009 IECC. But essentially, this is an incredibly cost-effective target where every month the savings can easily exceed the incremental cost for the entire Zero Energy Ready Home and effectively pay for all the improvements. So you want to optimize energy efficient performance. And this also, by doing that, makes you the home of the future because you're going to meet or exceed future codes. The second thing you do is once you've got a high efficient homes, you've taken on new challenges because a energy efficient enclosure means you have a whole different dynamic with how the wall works. So we're going to optimize performance and provide maximum protection. So we're going to have a complete moisture water protection system so that your enclosure won't get wet if it has less tolerance for drying and more tolerance for getting wet. And we're going to have a comprehensive HVAC system that's installed in a quality fashion, knowing that high performance homes and efficient homes are much more sensitive because they have smaller loads and they have longer swing seasons. And lastly, because it's so much more airtight, there's going to be a comprehensive indoor air quality system because we have to ensure that healthy living inside these homes. And the last building block is with solar costs keep coming down and battery costs in a 10x innovation cycle. Let's make these homes ready for solar in the future with no cost, low cost details that are easy to include. So there's no disruption or cost penalty in the future when people would want to add solar, and only in locations where it makes sense. So those are the three building blocks. And if you do all three, that's when you get a label from us, Zero Energy Ready Home. And looming ahead in the future, we have our eye on resilience and the importance that it plays and should be considered for our future specifications. Okay, the business case for builders that we communicate is three-pronged: satisfaction for customers, liability reduction, and market differentiation. So we'll talk more about the better experience that homeowners have in these homes and the lower ownership cost because of the monthly savings from energy efficient improvements, allowing it to exceed the incremental cost per month for the total improvements made in these homes. Lower liability comes from having customer service requirements that are reduced and having additional quality management features that come with verification of these homes. And lastly, market differentiation. You're in the top 1% of the best homes in the country, the federal government's most rigorous guidelines for excellence, so you stand ahead of existing homes, minimum code homes, and Energy Star certified homes, the main competition you would have as a Zero Energy Ready home builder. And the other thing we do is demystify for the builders how you get to zero Energy Ready home. And it's an elegant staircase that all feeds on itself with a very common set of implementation strategies. So you have a code home, and it could be 2009, 12, or whatever it may be. That's where you're starting. And often codes even use more and more today rating systems as an option for verification. So building that, you have above code program like Energy Star, version 3 or version 3.1. And again, like many codes are using more and more HERS verification. Energy Star programs use HERS verification, and they take you above code and add building science to manage additional risks that come with energy efficient performance. Then there's Indoor Air Plus, which builds on Energy Star and adds a comprehensive set of measures to deliver reduced risk of indoor air quality issues. And finally, with the same HERS verification and the identical looking requirements as Energy Star, you have Zero Energy Ready Home. And now we integrate Energy Star and Air Plus as requirements, and we deploy the best proven innovations from the DOE Building America program that are ready for the market. Now for consumers, our strategy is a two-pronged strategy. First, we defined our why. Why should they be interested in these homes? Well, a home is often the largest purchase of a lifetime. This is a great way to make sure you're buying a home that lives better. And the second part of our strategy is to translate that why. And we translate it with simple messaging, clarity that leverages contrast, proof with a showcase that these homes truly work and create experiences around that live better promise. And finally, with trust, with our voice of authority and with the confidence that these homes meet the federal government's greatest requirements for high performance. And so this is the basic strategy. The key thing here, all we're doing is taking proven principles from research that have shown to change behavior successfully when applied. So let's look at how this works. The first thing is a simple why. We got to get that across easy and fast. So we have a 60-second video we use. I won't run the video for you now, but to tell you the basic message here is we first recognize that home buying is overwhelming. We also recognize the reality that often the largest purchase of a lifetime. Shouldn't that important a purchase be one where you will be better positioned to live better and have a much greater satisfaction? And then we show how that why comes. The reason you'll live better is because you'll have tens of thousands of dollars of savings over a 30-year mortgage, and often more than 100,000 when solar systems are included. You have the most advanced thermal protection system, insulation and windows, so you have a cozy thermal blanket around your house that make you feel better every day. You have advanced heating and cooling systems and designs and strategies that deliver comfort at a whole new level. You have comprehensive expert recommended improvements that make sure every day you and your family can live better. You have a comprehensive water protection system so you can live worry-free about moisture issues that trouble so many. And then you have a comprehensive approach to quality assurance with third-party verification, includes testing, inspection, and diagnostics, and make sure you get what you pay for. And lastly, your home is built to meet and exceed future codes and other future requirements, so your home is future ready. That's all we're telling consumers. Just buy the home that lives better. Look for the label. That's a 60-second version. Once people buy homes, they're ready to spend more time. So we think it's still important to educate on the why after purchase. So we have a customizable homeowner manual. And here's an example where you see a specific builder Thrive at the bottom, and they can even insert their own picture of their own home. And the purpose of this brochure is to just train your new home sales force, your home buyers who move into your homes. And so once they move in, they're ready to spend a little bit of time understanding what's in the house. So this should look familiar. This is why their home lives better and how they get there with these 7 different improvements. And each page educates them about each individual special feature of the home, the advanced thermal enclosure, the thermal blanket that protects them, and how they get it with high performance windows and high performance insulation and all this draft protection. And then at the very bottom, you have the homeowner guidance. Anytime work's being done that involves penetrations or workers in your attic, make sure the contractor is required to maintain insulation levels, and airtightness. So you're basically using this tool to both educate the buyers so they're better informed about what a great purchase they made, and then also help them own their home and ensure the house features continue to work over time. I mentioned clarity is a second part of the strategy, and here again, it's based on lots of research where we know contrast is compelling. We often understand something much better when we see a comparison with something else than when in isolation. So many of you may have seen these comparison bar charts. You notice I seem to like bar charts a lot. The green bar is for zero energy ready home. The blue bar is for Energy Star certified home, and the gray bar is for existing homes. And essentially what's going on here is with these bars, I can contrast effectively, but before I show how, we are transparent with how these bars are calibrated in a document on our website, and then we use them on customizable handouts. This is one that we have, and what would happen would be if a sales process revealed that your buyers really had concerns about health, kids on inhalers and so forth, thick marker, you circle the healthful environment, and with this contrast, you can say we have 100% of the recommendations by the leading experts in the nation on indoor air quality. In comparison, homes built to the Energy Star requirements have half those recommendations, and homes that are existing homes for resale have hardly any. Wouldn't you agree? When every day you want your family to live as healthy as possible, you want 100% of the recommendations by leading experts. The comparison is so much more effective when you have the contrast. And we use this on our brochures the same way. You could circle here, and we have customizable features on almost all of our resources, again, so the builder's always featured. And one of the additional contrasts that's also there, besides the usual health and technology and comfort and quality and all the others that are based on having the expert recommendations, is the fact that you're buying the home of the future and meets future expectations. We love it also when the builder partners themselves leverage contrast on their own. So where a typical billboard looks like this for most builders, location and price and location, we love this billboard from one of the builder partners. My power bill is $5. What's yours? And it's Heather Robbins, the Garbett homeowner. So rather than the builder saying, trust me, we build a good home, listen to my buyer's experience. A little more compelling driving by this billboard than this I would recommend. Okay, the third concept here is proof and showing that their experiences are completely different in these homes. So you need a system to do this from the very beginning. And for that, we use the Housing Innovation Awards, where every year we recognize builders. In return, they give us, through the application, all the content we need to create these great showcases about zero energy ready homes. That's what's being used for our Tour Zero showcase. You go onto that resource and click on a climate zone. You get a list of homes. There are, again, hundreds and hundreds of homes with these amazing experiences. You can click on any one home. Here's the Vision Hill Lot 1 from Mandalay Homes, and then it will show up. And what we love about this is, here's empirically evidence that a zero energy ready home lives better. Here's a better experience. 2 months after we moved in, we threw away our kids' inhalers, priceless. And that's the large headline quote. The detailed quote's right below the key features section over here, if you want to read the full quote. And often the builders will provide videos with testimonials where you can look at the testimonial video as well. Then we have proof that it's energy efficient. And that's through the actual HERS index score that comes from the independent third-party verification. We have proof that the utility savings are significant with the actual calculated savings from the software used to assess that specific home. Again, here's an example, more than $100,000 of savings over a 30-year mortgage. And then we have proof of aesthetics, that those homes often look great with the images and the walkthrough and the floor plans that we provide. And the last concept is trust. And here essentially what we're doing is recognizing that this is a very difficult purchase. Some research study that I found said 1 in 3 consumers do not trust home building and real estate companies. I would bet 99 out of 100 don't trust. And not because they're not trustworthy individuals or companies, because consumers do not understand the purchase. They're putting themselves in a line for 30 years of financial obligation. They don't know what's behind the walls. They don't know what qualifies as a good home. They don't trust because they don't know what they're doing. Isn't it great to have a trusted voice of authority versus saying, just trust me, I'm a good builder? And that's why we love to see builder partners use them on their websites, create these wonderful plaques when you walk in model homes that have all these certifications. Certified homes is a great term. When you think about a certified pre-owned car versus a used car, just that element of being a certified pre-owned car has a value often of $800 to $1,200 just for the certification. People are just yearning for some form of trust when they make a big purchase. And again, on signs used in front of construction, in offices for the builders where they feature their awards and their posters for their homes that are on the tour of zero. And then the trust comes just from the certification that comes from the HERS rating itself and the certificate that comes from that. And we like to combine all these things in some of our resources. This is a builder resource that combines simple, clarity, proof, and trust. Simple message: you spend 60% of your day in your home. Wouldn't it be great to know that you have the best protection for you and your family? A simple why. Then the trust. You have Zero Energy Ready Home, Department of Energy, and the builder combined together on one sheet. Then the clarity, the 3 comparison bars that we talked about before. This is about health because this fact sheet is devoted to health. The one's devoted to comfort, one's devoted to savings, and so forth. And then we leverage our resource of testimonials. Remember, we have hundreds and hundreds of homes, and we have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. Here are 3 compelling testimonials about how great the health is in these homes. So we can package all these strategies sometimes into one resource, like this fact sheet that's devoted to one attribute, in this case, health. And then some content to train the sales force. Why is it so healthy? Because we keep contaminants out, we have fresh air, and we have high capture filtration. So wrapping things up, for Zero Energy Ready Home to date, we have 5,000 plus certifications. We figure about 10,000 plus in the pipeline of homes, pending some of the impacts of the current extraordinary conditions we're under today. We have prominent partners, developers, production builders, offsite companies, affordable housing, and we're doing yeoman's work integrating with code programs and other qualified action programs, rural housing, LEED for homes, tremendous number of points for Zero Ready, stretch codes. So lots of achievements to date. So it leaves me with just a final word to wrap up today's session. And we're going to compare where we are with the zero imperative versus the current coronavirus. The virus is like the elephant in the room. You just can't ignore it. It's there. It's killing people today. It's overwhelming hospitals. It's shutting down businesses. Everything is massively disrupted. So as a result, we're throwing trillions and trillions of dollars at the problem. We're sheltering in place. We are closing the economy. We're doing draconian things because you cannot ignore the elephant in the room. In contrast, zero imperative is more like the frogs in the boiling water. I know it's a myth, but the concept is what's important. And you just gradually, as things getting hotter and hotter, you just may not realize it because it's so gradual. And how do we get urgency around something that's like that versus the elephant in the room? And that's a big challenge. And that's why I love the comment earlier before the session. This is kind of a special moment that's revealing, that's an unintended outcome of the current health crisis, is globally people are getting to see what a zero building imperative would look like if we all took action. They're getting to see what clear water and cleaner air look like and what it feels like and what it smells like. This is a special time, and we need to call attention to the fact that this is what we could have if we address this longer term issue. That's not that long term. It's only decades away before a lot of the bigger problems are coming. So here's a last word of wisdom from me to wrap up today. It's time to be a zero leader. I'd like everyone to think about 4 actions. Commit to getting on the path to zero. Commit that it's time. And take a long look at it. Find a preferred step for you and take action. I don't care if it's a program to implement. If you're a builder, it's a new level of performance and certification to go after, a new level of study or expertise to achieve, but take action, identifying a preferred step on the path and applying it. Third, you've got to learn to communicate the zero business case. We are not the elephant in the room. We still have to be really proficient communicating our value. And 4, show up. There's so many great events, virtual, in person. I'm so impressed so many of you came today, and I'm humbled by it, but we have to start doing these 4 actions. And so with that, I want to thank you for coming. I will take some questions. I will leave up my contact information for any of you who'd like to reach out personally. Thank you so much. I love this industry. I want to see you all do just as good as you can do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sam. We do have quite a number of questions that are already in. We're going to get to as many as we can before 3:10 p.m. Eastern Time. So let's delve right into it, Sam. First one is up from Lee. He wanted to know what's going to take for municipalities and their zoning boards to consider lowering the minimum square footage of a single-family home. In his area, it's still between 900 and 1,000 square feet.
You know, that's a question that's kind of outside my normal focus. You know, I know we just have to really address so many issues with housing, have to do with affordability, with access, with lots of interest for populations to keep moving more and more into cities. So I don't really have a great recommendation there. My bigger call to action, though, is that zoning and building department requirements are this great unused asset. I could basically achieve zero energy in the building sector by just setting no cost policies in place that give greater density or greater access to permitting or quicker building inspections, whatever it may be, for zero buildings versus non-zero buildings. And I'd love to see us really start using codes and policies to get buildings in place built the right way. It's almost cost prohibitive to go back and change the building stock once it's built. It's so much more cost effective if we do it up front. So I'd love to see us leverage codes and building department policies to recognize we have that tool to use to really affect change with zero energy and zero energy ready buildings.
All right, next question is from Kevin. He wanted to know who or what source is most accurate in labeling embodied carbon content in our everyday products, and what everyday product is most problematic?
You know, these are the details I'm looking for Team Zero to gather all the key players around the table and make those decisions. My personal decision just doesn't mean anything on this issue. I think this is such a new area. I only am beginning to start to get up to speed on this topic, but we need, with the entire gateway, to develop thresholds and key metrics that are decision points for everything we're doing. So I don't know the answer except to say it's really a great question and something that needs to be done. I recommend doing it through the Team Zero Gateway process, almost like a collective impact strategy where we all start to agree on some of the terminology, some of the thresholds, some of the requirements, and start to get, again, moving away from confusion to a movement.
You know, it's interesting you brought the Team Zero Gateway information because we had a couple questions about that slide. So the first one is from Drew. He wanted to know, was there a scale that was used for the various bar graphs you were showing?
Intentionally, no scale was used. The purpose of the bar graphs is purely to convey the transition that's happening step by step from code all the way to zero embodied energy, and how embodied energy becomes more and more significant, how basically you're moving to lower and lower carbon, how the energy consumption is gradually changing, how performance keeps improving, then gets to a basic foundation that is sustained throughout the whole path to zero. It's only to convey those basic principles. And the numbers will be so different depending which specific option you pick. If I go passive house versus zero energy ready home for zero energy ready solution, I have very different levels of energy efficient performance. Both great programs, both have different types of targets in terms of what they're going after, but the bars would change significantly. The key is the transformation of the bars step by step by step.
Okay, sticking with that that slide, Robert wanted to know, could the embodied energy bars actually increase as you go from minimum code to high performance, as, for example, one uses more materials to insulate?
It's a great question, and it's given the relative significance of the insulation material to the big players like concrete, I don't know that it would be that measurable. I think the biggest factor will be a lot of the structural material choices. Sometimes, to his point, if your solution to get more efficient, so use a lot of foam insulation, that may factor in and result in what he's saying. So again, I will defer to a really collective impact process to look at this foundational way to illustrate with the bar graphs the path to zero and do some fine tuning. The more important point was to show that if we use a tool like this, we can provide clarity, we can help people make choices, and that's all we're trying to do at this juncture.
Okay. Wanted to get to a question from Catherine. She wanted to know, how does the embodied energy of steel frame construction compare to wood frame?
It's higher, but it's better than concrete.
Okay.
But again, I will suggest there's a lot of great resources on embodied energy. All you have to do, I saw some great sessions at the last VIAS conference. I've read some recent papers lately that I just pulled off the normal search engines. There's a lot of resources, but what you'll find is like there are 3 or 4 that are like the 80% solution. I mentioned concrete and foam, and there are a few others where basically they have such significant embodied energy, and they're such a significant part of buildings. If you can address the top 3 or 4 most significant carbon materials or carbon using materials, then you will basically have an 80% solution.
Okay. Wanted to get to a question from John. He wanted to know, how is embodied carbon compared to operational carbon, say over a period of time or just in general?
The operational carbon deals with, as you would expect, the carbon that's consumed and then results in emissions to operate the building. So it's all your equipment, it's your appliances, lighting, and so forth. So to the degree that you have equipment that uses fossil fuel versus electricity, you're producing carbon on site. And to the degree that the energy you consume, the electric energy, is produced by fossil fuels, then that creates a carbon footprint as well. So all that has to be accounted for. The reason why the reason why there's a movement to all electric buildings is because that's also aligned with a movement to higher renewable energy systems for electricity, and we can control easier the carbon at generating plants than at each individual building. So the operational energy simply is limited to the carbon outcome from running the building. And the other embodied carbon is from the carbon that's, again, required to build the building itself, to get resources and extract resources to then produce in a plant, products that are used then for construction, and they ship those products to the job site, and the transportation consumes fossil fuels and produces carbon, and then when you process a fuel process the materials at end of life, all that's what you're factoring in, and that's just associated with the materials. So operational energy is to operate the building as it implies, and embodied energy is what's embodied in the materials in the building.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit here, Sam. I've got kind of a combo question from Mark and from Fernando. Mark says, I'm a passive house architect preparing a presentation for realtors to get them on board. Where can I find data on the improvement of resale prices of increased performance homes? And a great follow-up to that was Fernando's question about, are appraisers and realtors aware of this program and how it affects the resale value of a home? So can you kind of speak to the whole resale topic?
Well, the most significant study I know was, I want to say 6-7 years ago. I think it was 30,000 homes in North Carolina, huge sample. They looked at homes that I think were Energy Star versus non-Energy Star homes. The big finding was that there was, I think, a 33% reduced delinquency non-payment rate with the high performance homes versus the code minimum homes. So it was a very significant finding because it demonstrated to the financial industry, to underwriters, that there's lower risk with higher performance. And it was, I think, pegged to the Energy Star was the toggle they could use to break it into the two groups, the regular homes, control homes, and the high performance homes. So that was a significant finding. Some thought it was too high. 33% is such a huge factor difference for delinquency non-payment. I think it was 90-day non-payment, that it was almost too hard to believe. But it was the most significant recent study I've seen. There were studies done in California to look at the value of homes with photovoltaics, with solar electric systems on the roof, and those without. Again, there was a very high value associated with the solar electric homes at resale. So there's all these various studies. What I don't know, and this is what is critical, is whether any of these studies have been peer-reviewed in the way that economists would demand for them to be given full weight. And so the reason why I say that at the end is I always like to caveat that we're sometimes stuck getting the kind of quality study that you need to convince the key players in the financing world, economists. There's a very strict peer review process that you have to have. And there are lots of anecdotal studies that have been done. So it's a hard question. Again, you can do the normal research and search engines and come up with a number of different studies. There's no seminal work that's so compelling that everyone goes, stop the presses. We have the silver bullet. We know that we can prove this without question. And so it goes, and more significantly, once you get beyond residence and into commercial buildings, it's the 330-300 rule. We spend $300 in operation cost, 30% I think on maintenance, and $300 $3 a square foot on energy. We spend $30 a square foot in maintenance, and we spend $300 a square foot on labor and workforce in a building. So the big benefit to go after, even beyond in terms of value in commercial buildings, is just the value and productivity. So there are lots of these kinds of business case metrics that are just waiting to be developed to the point where they're absolutely past all the scrutiny that they need to, but I haven't seen them yet. We know these homes perform better. We know we have track records they use less energy, and appraisers and are gradually getting better. I think the MLS system is adding toggles for these certification programs so they're easier for appraisers to find. There's a green appraisal addendum that is in place for accounting for the value of these improvements. But all of these things are kind of a work in progress. I'm reluctant to say they're ready for prime time. Each one, we have to work through the problems. Some markets, I don't care about any significant problems. Others, it comes up that appraisers or lenders or the market doesn't seem to get there as easily. So this is a great thing to work on, maybe especially during this time when we're not, when we can't do our normal work as easily. This would be a great research to continue. So these are great questions. I wish we had great answers for them.
All right, we're going to have to wrap up. I wanted to end on one question here I think is apropos, given that we're 1 week away from Earth Day. It comes from Susan. She wants to know, can we / the planet afford to wait for folks to slowly progress along the gateway path?
I don't know. I look every day at what's looming ahead. I know I'm pretty fearful, but I'm pretty sober about the reality. How much can I move players with this sphere of influence that we have within the programs that we work? So there's some bigger leadership that I think's going to have to embrace this and invoke more draconian policies and requirements. But for now, I don't know any other way to do this but to help people find their way. I cannot take a code builder and move them to Passive House. It just can't be done. You got to get them to Energy Star first and get them to Zero Ready and get them to Passive House and get them to look at solar and then go to maybe drop their gas furnaces and gas cooktops. It's just, that's the system that we work with mainstream builders. More severe requirements require something at a policy level. And for a lot of us who don't work at the policy level, we have to work with the systems we have and the strategies that can work today. I know we have an amazing business case. Boy, these are such good questions. I was hoping for a few, like just softballs to come in. Not one of these was an easy question, but this is great.
And let me tell you, Sam, we got wonderful questions that we're just not going to be able to get to, unfortunately. So if you did not get your question asked and you didn't get an answer to your question, please jot down Sam's email address. It's on the screen there. Send it to him. I know he is a responsive guy and a very pleasant guy. So please send your question to him if you didn't get asked, if it didn't get answered. Sam, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really do appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. It was great.
And thank you also to our massive audience we had today, all-time record audience for attending today, asking these wonderful questions, as Sam mentioned. And thank you to NV Energy, to the Structural Insulated Panel Association, and to Team Zero for their wonderful sponsorship of this webinar. Our next webinar is going to be 2 weeks from today. It'll be Wednesday, April 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, when we'll welcome Matt Power back to the webinar series. We're going to be talking about resilient housing products and preparation in an age of monster storms, raging wildfires, and deadly pandemics. A pretty timely topic, if you ask me. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourself and your family, enjoy Earth Day, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. Goodbye, everyone.